Fake news? That's a very old story. Paul Horner believes he turned the presidential election in favor of Donald Trump. Horner, 38, writes fake news stories. Some are silly, some are mean, but none is factual. The problem is, people believe them. Horner wrote many fake stories during the 2016 presidential election between Trump and his Democratic rival, Hillary Clinton. The stories were widely circulated and believed to be true by many people. Horner thinks his fake news helped Trump win votes. Uncharted political territory. For many, Horner's claim signals an alarming turn in uncharted political territory. But fake news is part of American history. In fact, it goes back to the founding of the Republic. In 1769, John Adams, who was later America's first vice president and second president, gleefully wrote in his diary about spending the evening occupied with a curious employment, cooking up paragraphs, articles, occurrences, etc., working the political engine. Adams, along with his cousin, Sam, and a handful of other Boston patriots, were planting false and exaggerated stories meant to undermine royal authority in Massachusetts. Several other leaders of the American Revolution likewise attempted to manage public opinion by fabricating stories that looked like the real thing. William Livingston, then governor of New Jersey, secretly crafted lengthy pieces that newspaper publishers featured. One, titled The Impartial Chronicle, was anything but neutral. The story claimed that the king was sending tens of thousands of foreign soldiers to kill Americans. A fake newspaper issue. But the most important was crafted in 1782 at a printing press in a Paris suburb. Benjamin Franklin, taking time out from his duties as the official American representative in France, made an entirely fake issue of a real Boston newspaper called the Independent Chronicle. In it, Franklin made up a story set in the New York frontier. The story was a scary one. It said that American forces had discovered bags containing more than 700 scalps of people living in the country that were taken by Indians who were partnered with King George of England. There's also a note written to the tyrant king hoping he would receive these scalps as presents and be happy. None of this was true, of course, but it struck a frightful chord. To drive the point home, Franklin composed a fake letter from a real person, naval hero John Paul Jones, that repeated almost word for word the Declaration of Independence, including the suggestion that the colonies must declare independence because the king has engaged savages to murder defenseless farmers, women, and children. Franklin sent out copies of his fake newspaper, and the story appeared in real papers in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, and Rhode Island. By the press, we can speak to nations, Franklin wrote to his friend about his fake news story. Franklin's concoction didn't swing the revolution between the colonists and England. By this time, the Americans had defeated the British at Yorktown, and independence was all but secured. But the topic of Franklin's gory fake news story was significant. What an independent United States would do about the people Franklin spread this untruth about was entirely up in the air. To be sure, many Native Americans had allied with the British and inflicted deep wounds to families across the frontier. But not all of them had. Franklin's lies added to the notion that all Indians were bad people. None of them, by that reasoning, could be Americans, even the thousands who served alongside George Washington. Americans today are definitely dumber. 30 years later, in 1813, America was at war again with Britain. The King's men were again making alliances with Native Americans. At the Raisin River in Michigan, a combined force of British soldiers and natives killed hundreds of Kentucky militiamen. An outraged public then adopted the rallying cry, "Remember the Raisin," for the remainder of the War of 1812. How did newspaper publishers remember the Raisin River attack? By resurrecting Franklin's fake news stories from years earlier. That spring, to illustrate the long roots of this terrible bloodshed, U.S. newspapers introduced a new generation to Franklin's fake bags of scalps. And, once again, the idea that Indians were America's enemy was also reintroduced. Today's fake news writer, Horner, suggests that Americans today are definitely dumber than they used to be. Perhaps. But we are not the only ones who fell for fake news. American leaders, and even the founding fathers of the country, were not above embracing lies to shape opinion. The need to be cautious. These stories from America's past, however, are not different than ones today. Then, as now, they were about who belongs to the nation and who does not. Then, as now, they were about stirring up fear and passions. We need to proceed cautiously. Stories that we think may vanish as a blip in our social media newsfeed may end up having a longer life than we expect, causing more damage than we imagine.